Hi guys, and welcome to our first asynchronous session of Composition 1. As I mentioned yesterday when we were going over the syllabus, half of this class will take place online as an asynchronous course, and the other half, of course, will be the ones that we do in person. In the case of this class, which is the Fall 2023, this will be in person on Monday and Wednesday, and will be asynchronous on Tuesday and Thursday. So on Tuesday and Thursday classes, you will usually get some kind of assignment from me that comes with a video that talks about the concepts that we're going over in class that day, and then you'll have to complete the assignment and turn it in by midnight on that Tuesday and Thursday night, sometimes later. Turning in the assignment on time is how you will be counted for attendance. So even if you're not completely finished with it, make sure that it's in on time so that you at least get the attendance. Okay, so today we're starting off on our grammar boot camp, which will be 5 days where we cover mostly grammar. Most of those will be asynchronous course times like this one. So today what we're covering is various kinds of sentence problems. Fragments, which is probably the most complicated one, and then run-ons and comma splices, which are basically the same thing. We'll start off with fragments, and fragments, what fragments are, I like the way, this is, by the way, a PowerPoint by Dr. Truman. This isn't by me. Fragments are just incomplete sentences. So they're missing some important piece that makes a sentence a complete sentence. And if you're missing one of those pieces, then your sentence isn't a proper sentence, and it doesn't really belong in an academic paper. Now, we talk in incomplete sentences all the time. It's perfectly normal with your friends and family to use incomplete sentences because you can kind of infer what the other part of the sentence is supposed to be. And I'll give you an example of that now. How many of us have had conversations that kind of went like this? Where's Mom? The store. What for? Milk and bread. And cheese for the pizza? Not sure. So this could be a conversation that anybody would have, and all of the things in here that are missing are things that could be inferred. Where's Mom? That's a complete sentence. The store? That's not a complete sentence. It's missing a verb. What for? Is almost a complete sentence. Needs a subject. Milk and bread. That one needs a verb. And cheese for the pizza. Both of those need verbs. Not sure. Not sure about what. Who's not sure. So yeah, these are all incomplete sentences. We know what they mean. We can read through this, we could hear this if we were talking about it, and we would know what they meant. And so that's why we talk this way. But we can't write this way, because writing this way is unprofessional and makes our paper confusing to read. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this PowerPoint really quickly, because it does give some really good examples of these different kinds of sentence problems. Mostly we'll focus on the fragments because that's the most complicated part, but then we'll get to the other sentence problems. So in slide 5 here, she points out where in the OER, our open source textbook, you can find the part about sentence fragments, and then it has the chapter here. Complete sentences have 3 important parts: a subject or actor, a verb or action, and words to complete the thought. So every sentence needs to have those 3 parts. It needs to have someone or something that it's about. It needs to have an action that's happening, and it needs to have words that make it into a complete thought. So a sentence could be something as simple as they slept. They is the subject, Slept is the action. Even though they're not moving around or anything, it's still an action. And it's a complete thought because they're not leaving anything out to dry. Okay. Sentence fragments are simply grammatically incomplete sentences. They lack one of the three important parts. So how can you tell the difference between a sentence and a sentence fragment? How can you fix sentence fragments? As you learn about fragments, keep in mind that sentence length is not a very helpful way of identifying fragments. Both of the items below are fragments. So this is a very short one. Before you go, this one is an incomplete thought. It has a subject, it has a verb, but it doesn't have, it's not a complete thought because what happens before you go? Before you go, take out the trash. Before you go, check on the dog. But it needs something that completes this thought. This next one here, ensuring his own survival with his extensive cache of supplies, food, water, rope, tarps, knives, and a first aid kit. So, this has a subject, and again it has an action, but again it needs to be a complete thought. It's saying he's ensuring his survival while he's doing something else, but it doesn't tell us what that something else is. Okay, so let's go down and see some more examples here. Often a missing verb, or often a sentence fragment is missing a verb or part of a verb string. So here's an example of that. John's remarkable basketball skills. So this has a subject, John, but it doesn't have an actual action. He's not doing anything here. This is a thing, his basketball skills. So this is the correct way to do it. John has worked hard and developed remarkable basketball skills. John worked is the subject and verb here, and then it's explaining how he's worked and what that's led to. Complete thought. Sometimes it's missing a subject. Wandering through the streets around midnight. So this one it doesn't have a noun for it to go there to tell us what this is about. We know something's wandering the streets, but we don't know what. And so here's two different ways to correct that with completely different subjects. The teens were wandering through the streets around midnight. So now the teens are the subject. They're wandering, and they're going through the streets at midnight. Has everything we need. Wandering through the streets around midnight, we witnessed an accident. So now we are the subject, and all of the other parts are complete. Finally here, sometimes it is a dependent clause that has been punctuated like a sentence. So a dependent clause is a shorter part of a sentence that needs an independent clause to go with it. You talked about this in school. Usually a dependent clause starts off with because, or it has a piece after it, like it's missing one of those other parts, and then it still needs to have another part to the sentence. So this part, again, it'll be an incomplete thought. Even though he aggravated the entire audience with his grotesque jokes. So we could take out this part. This is what's messing everything up. And it would be, he aggravated the audience with his grotesque jokes. That is a complete sentence. But because it says, even though he aggravated the audience with his grotesque jokes, we need something to connect onto the back here. Something that happened even though he was aggravating the audience. So even though he aggravated the entire audience with his grotesque jokes, the manager asked him to perform again the following night. Okay. Sometimes a sentence fragment can give you a great deal of information, but still not be a complete sentence. We've seen a few of those so far. After the coach encouraged him so much last year, and he seemed to improve with each passing game. Again, incomplete thought. We need to know what happened after all of this, right? immediately after the conclusion of the football game with the crowds of people exiting the stadium. Again, incomplete thought. We need to know what happened immediately after the conclusion of the football game with the crowds exiting the stadium. We could say immediately after the conclusion of the football game, the crowds exited the stadium. That would be a complete thought. Or we could say immediately after the conclusion of the football game with the crowds exiting the stadium, the coach found out that his wife had given birth. Okay, so the next part here that we're going to look at is run-ons and fused sentences. So this part's not that complicated, so we won't spend quite as much time on it. A run-on is two sentences that are crammed together into one, as if they are one sentence. I went to the store, I bought bread, period. That would be a run-on or a fused sentence, because I didn't punctuate I went to the store correctly. I went to the store is a complete sentence. I bought bread is a complete sentence. But if I just put those together without any punctuation in between, that would be a run-on. Now, if I connected them with a comma and no other words added in, that would be a comma splice, which is the other kind of basically the same thing. So, here's a video you can watch if you want to learn about comma splices. There's a bunch of videos in here. I'll include this in the description below. Again, she points out where you can find out about run-on sentences in the OER. And in the OER, it gives us some examples here. This is the one that is probably the best one. So, yeah, run-on sentences occur when two or more complete sentences, two or more units of subject, verb, words to complete the thought are incorrectly joined. Note that if two sentences are inappropriately joined with only a comma, the error is called a comma splice. So here's an example of two sentences that are connected with a comma, and they should have more stuff going on. Sometimes books do not have the most up-to-date information. It is a good idea to then to look for articles in specialized periodicals. So the yellow one here is a complete sentence. The blue one here is a complete sentence. And we need a way to connect those. The person is using a comma here, which is incorrect. Instead, what you could do, you can add a comma plus some kind of a linking word. You've heard of the fanboys, for and nor, but or yet so. There's also a lot of other linking words out there that you can use as well. Those are called coordinating conjunctions, and you can coordinate two sentences together with those. You just need a comma and then one of those, and you're good. You could also use a semicolon and just make that a complete thought. You only want to do that if the two sentences that you have next to each other are really in the same line of thinking. And alternatively, you can just put a period there. And then there's a fourth way you can do it. You can add a subordinating conjunction, which is like if you said, because sometimes books do not have the most up-to-date information, comma, it is a good idea then to look for articles in specialized periodicals. If you did it that way, then it would be okay as well. Let's skip over that one. So again, here's some examples of how you can correct these. So the example they have here, some students think they can study for an important exam by cramming all night. They are probably wrong. If you had those without any punctuation in between, that would be incorrect, of course, because those are two separate sentences. So the way they've fixed this first one is they've added a period and capitalized the next word, making this into two independent sentences. The next one here, they've added a comma and a coordinating conjunction of but. And the last one here, they've added a semicolon. So, some students think they can study for an important exam by cramming all night, comma, but they are probably wrong. Here's the fanboys. All right. yeah, and then this one's talking about subordination. So, Chung gets straight A's. He studies all the time. There should be something breaking this up right here. And the way that they've actually fixed this is they've added because. Yeah, he gets straight A's because he studies all the time. Chung, who studies all the time, gets straight A's. All right. Remember, if you have two or more complete thoughts in a sentence, make sure they are separated by the appropriate punctuation. And last of all, comma splices. Again, it's basically the same thing. If you're making comma splices instead of run-on sentences, what you're probably doing is you're getting confused about what punctuation you're using is for. Commas are for breaking up parts within a sentence, and periods are for showing when a sentence starts and when it stops. So, yeah, if you're getting a lot of comma splices, then you basically should just be replacing those with periods most of the time. Yeah, comma splices connect to equivalent clauses with only a comma. You can put in a fanboys, you can put in a period, you can put in a semicolon. Any of those is fine. All right. So yeah, these are pretty similar to what we saw before. And I'm not going to waste your time with them. So, your assignment for tonight is you are going to give examples of each one of these. Write 3 sentence fragments, one of each kind, so one that's missing a subject, one that's missing a verb, and one that is an incomplete thought. And then you also need to write a run-on sentence and a comma splice. And then, once you've written all 5 of those, below that you will write those corrected. So correct your fragments and correct your run-on sentence and your comma splice in whatever way you feel like. But yeah, make sure they're complete sentences. I'm going to include this PowerPoint in the description as well. And if you look down here, there are a bunch of videos that you can go to. Hopefully all these links still work. And these will show you, probably in a better and more concise way than I did, how to fix fragments, how to fix run-ons and comma splices, and all of this other stuff. All right. Yes, you have until midnight to turn in this assignment. Midnight on Tuesday. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.